The re-emergence of force feedback devices in flight simulation has created a whole new avenue for increasing immersion. And one of the early adopters was Moza with the AY210 force feedback yoke. In my initial review I was very impressed with this yoke. If you want to know more, check out my video link in the notes below. There were however areas that needed improvement, and since release Moza have been very busy in the background developing new features and functions to enhance what is already an excellent product. In this video we'll be looking at just 3 of the enhancements: hardware and telemetry trim and autopilot following, each one designed to mimic our real-world counterparts. Welcome to the SimHanger, my name's Mark, thank you very much for watching, and let me get started by thanking this video sponsor, FS Academy, which has a complete package to enhance your piloting skills. Join me in the Cessna 172 somewhere in France, and we're going to start off by having a look at the hardware trim function. What this does is physically move the yoke to match the amount of elevator trim applied. Let me show you. In the Moza cockpit software, I've selected the AY10, then open the special tab and enable hardware trim mode. Yes, it's as quick and as easy as that. I've configured elevator nose up and down to a button on my yoke. Now as I push forward for elevator nose down, we can see the elevator drop and the yoke react accordingly, and the reverse when I apply elevator nose up. Exactly as would happen in some real aircraft, but for aircraft like the Cessna, not really realistic because it uses trim tabs. And this is where telemetry trim comes into play. To enable it, we'll turn off the hardware trim, go to our expert settings with our physics model set to advanced and default, select force feedback mode to advanced, and here you get the option to enable both trim and autopilot following. Let me just disable that, so when you start it'll look something like this. Simply enable both. That's trim, now autopilot following, and you have a host of different settings which we'll revisit later. This is a more realistic setting for the Cessna 172. Keep your eye on the elevators on the tail, now applying nose down. Note it's only the trim tab and not the elevators that are moving. Now applying nose up, the trim tab is moving, but my yoke is not. So in effect, hardware trim is disabled when on the ground. For the Cessna, this is a much more realistic representation of our real-life counterpart. Here's a look at the same in the cockpit. Variety of options are available, including how fast it responds, the amount of movement recorded, but once again here you can see the trim wheel is moving and the yoke is not. To anybody who's already got the yoke, the hardware trim is available. I'm using a beta version of the software. Telemetry trim should be released soon. Let's now turn our attention to autopilot following. This again is in the beta and is in the early stages of development, but official release is expected soon. Just going to change my heading and you should see the heading bug move. There we are, it's about 300 degrees. I am currently set on the runway, but I'm going to enable the heading function, and we'll see that pop up on the PFD. There it is. And now I'm going to enable the autopilot. As the flight director is enabled, the aircraft will try and follow that new heading, and the yoke will move accordingly. And we can see here that the physical yoke is matching the movement in the sim. Now disabled autopilot, and the yoke will return to center. The snapback of the yoke in sim is not very realistic, but of course the best way to test this is let's get up in the air and give it a go. When we're on the runway at idle you would have noticed the vibration via the force feedback, and yes, it was a little bit exaggerated for the benefit of demonstration, but as we push the throttle forward and the RPM increased, so the vibration became much finer and almost just a haptic feedback. Flaps up. We don't need to climb very high to demonstrate it. Before enabling the autopilot, I'm just going to set it for heading and alt mode. Just climb a tad higher. Worth mentioning, there's also been a considerable improvement to the dynamic forces applied to the yoke. Heading bug is set about 60-70 degrees to my right, autopilot now engaged, and the yoke is now following the input from the autopilot. Initially right hand down, then backed off on the bank so we didn't tip at a dangerous angle, and now applying aileron in the opposite direction slowly to bring us back to level flight. The heading bug itself is now centered, autopilot will bring us back to straight and level, and our yoke will center accordingly. There we go. The autopilot following function is by and large working very well. There are occasionally a few anomalies with it, but it is still in development. But as mentioned earlier, I do expect it to be released in the next couple of weeks. I would imagine sometime towards the latter part of May, at the very latest. As we're still on heading mode, I can now just change my heading and the yoke should follow accordingly, once again taking input from the autopilot. There are a number of other significant changes coming, but once again these are in development and I haven't had an opportunity to give them a test yet. But if you're interested in this sort of thing, stay tuned as I'll be bringing you regular updates. Just quickly turning back to the Moza cockpit software and staying under the expert settings, here we can see all the various options are available, not all of which I've tested or tried. Under the trim tab for both roll and pitch, you can change and adjust the follow, rate and scale, and the same applies to the autopilot following mode, as well as how much pressure you need to apply to the yoke to break out of the autopilot mode. One question I'm going to be inevitably asked is, does it apply to the AB9 force feedback base? The hardware trim mode does, providing you update to the latest firmware. However, telemetry trim is still not available as far as I'm aware, but again for a flight stick, probably not appropriate to be honest. As I have access to all the various experimental and beta versions of this software, I'm aware of just how regularly and how much work is being put into this by Moza. In fact, the updates are so regular it's pretty hard to keep up, but to me it does indicate a level of commitment to the flight sim peripherals by Moza, which for me is very encouraging. Another question I'm likely to be asked relates to FlightSim.com's CLS60 and how do they compare. Well, the CLS60 wins in my opinion in terms of features and functions. It's a more mature product, and realism if you're a pilot in training and so on. But in terms of price and form and factor, the Moza product will have wider appeal and is catching up fast. What's your view, and are you planning on getting a force feedback device, be it a flight stick or perhaps a yoke? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it does help me and the channel. And as always, thank you very much for joining me today. Stay well, look after yourselves, I'll see you all again very soon. And ciao for now.